Okay guys, now I'm going to be helping you find a motherboard for your computer. There are two types of motherboard, an AMD motherboard and Intel motherboard. I'll get to the sizes as I've explained in the cases, looking for a case before. If you look over here, you'll see AMD, Intel. Those are two different brands for chipsets on the motherboard, that the controllers and stuff on the motherboard. You have combos that could be cheaper, sometimes they're not. It depends. Like I said, those are kind of like the bare bones kits that I was explaining in an earlier video. All those videos will be linked below with links. Um, Motherboard accessories, that could be like SATA cables, show you I want like power cables, pins, jumpers. Actually, there's not much to this. Um, I guess mainly jumpers is the most important thing. Um, that like jumpers are these little pins that connect two wires on the motherboard together, and they can change settings through a physical means versus through the BIOS on the motherboard. This is what those are used for, and sometimes you can use those jumpers on older DVD drives and on CD drives and such. Anyways, get back to the server motherboards. Definitely not going to go through because, like I said on the cases and other components, if you're looking for a server motherboard, I hope you know at least as much as I do for building a computer. Otherwise, you probably should find some help. Because I mean, a server is not probably not any harder because I haven't built a server computer, but I mean, putting the computer together is just like the software and stuff is totally different. I'm sure that's depending on what type of server you want. But we're not going to look at server motherboards in this video. Okay, the difference between AMD and Intel motherboards, mainly price and performance. You pay for what you get. The higher end Intels are obviously going to be faster and better. I mean, you're paying a lot of money for the high end Intel motherboards, and so they're going to be the best you can buy. AMD, however, I mean, I'm biased towards Intel, but AMD is a very good motherboard um, company. I'm going to start with AMD because if you're building a budget computer, it's definitely usually the way to go. Sometimes if you get correct sales on Intel parts, they can be cheaper. But if you're doing a budget build, AMD is usually the cheapest. And right here is a pretty good example. Brands of motherboards, like you see Elite Group here, ASUS, ASRock, MSI, BioStar, Gigabyte. I mean, I I've been biased towards like ASUS and Gigabyte, but I mean I'm starting to break that bias as um, well, just based off reviews and high motherboards. I usually still keep that because unless the reviews are really good for the other brands, I don't know. It's just reliability because I've had a XFX motherboard and I'm not sure if they make motherboards anymore, but the one I got, the 750i for an old socket 775 Intel CPU, was a pretty crappy motherboard to say the least. It was horrible. I was not happy with it. I still have it and it's still in my second computer because that's what I had to use and it was cheaper to buy a new one. And fortunately, my replacement on the warranty was successful and it's been working ever since, over a year now. So I'm glad that works. But you should make sure you also look at warranties when you get the motherboards because that can save you a lot of pain instead of having to replace the whole thing. Okay, get into this one. Chipsets, it's really quite hard to explain what you need. Like explain chipsets. Like they have an 880, 890, then they have other letters after it, like the G here, or like an FX or other stuff. Like you see 6 gigabits, then SATA ports. You're gonna have to learn all these port names. Like I said, if you're really unsure of what you actually need, and you can't figure it out by this video, use forums. They're very helpful, and they'd be glad to help you figure out what you need. This right here is a pretty decent deal on a low end. It's gonna get the job done motherboard that has newer features and everything else. It has integrated graphics, which means if you're not playing games, that's all you need. Like, you can even play older games fine on this too with this graphics card. Any new, like, '06 and on 3D games probably won't play very well on this. Even some '05 ones won't play well. I mean, you won't be able to max them, like max graphics on this for sure. And that's really old. That's like what, 7-year-old games still can't be maxed on this. Probably. Some will, obviously, but some of the better higher graphics ones will not. So, I mean, you're going to need a graphics card no matter what. But with this, it has a port that allows you to have a graphics card. And actually, 2 graphics cards on this specific one. But this video is going to be pretty long explaining this stuff. So, if you don't want to listen to the whole thing, like I said, forums are there, Google's there. I'm going to try and explain as much as I can. Like that. So, and I'm going to keep on going. Okay. Memory slots. 4 is your typical number. Sometimes on the smaller motherboards, you will get 2. And even on the really high ones, you will get 8 slots. For several motherboards, you can get like 16, 32. Some are ridiculous. Memory. The common rule of thumb used to be memory is the biggest upgradable performance on a computer. Well, pretty much like 4 gigs. I think for probably 70% of people is adequate. Like if you're playing video games, now it's starting to be you might want more than 4 gigs, 8 gigabytes if you're playing video games, which RAM is getting pretty cheap, and that will be explained in a later video about what RAM you're gonna want. But as long as you have 2 by 240 pin, or it doesn't necessarily have to be 240, could have a different pin. Unlikely for this when this video is made for the type of RAM that's out. But as long as you have at least 2 slots, you should be fine for RAM. So keep that in mind. Speed. I mean, it's hard to say what speed. If you're not needing a really fast computer, just keep speed out of it. You're going to want to know this for when you get your RAM, for instance. So you're going to want to know what speed your motherboard supports, because there are really fast speed RAMs that cost a lot, and there are cheaper ones that are still good but are slower. But different motherboards support different speeds. Now the PCI Express slot is a graphics card port, and sometimes can be used for like RAID cards, like really high-end, expensive cards that usually you wouldn't be using in such a cheap motherboard anyway. But PCI Express port, the most common thing to put into it is a graphics card, and this motherboard is very capable of. Probably best to just put 1 graphics card in this instead of 2, because the next port is ×4, which should mean a fourth the bandwidth, like performance, but usually doesn't mean that, because you can combine 2 graphics cards and get double the performance, but this will give you less performance if you use 2 graphics cards than if you got a better motherboard. So it would be wiser to invest in a more expensive motherboard first with 1 graphics card and get a second graphics card later on. So if you're getting this one, I would just look at getting at most 1 graphics card. Or if you don't need the graphics card, it has a built-on chipset and you won't need it. If you don't need the power of a graphics card. And really, it doesn't matter. This probably, if you look on the picture, you probably won't be able to see it from the video. This has a DVI port and a VGA port. Doesn't appear to have an HDMI port, but it has DVI and VGA built onto the motherboard, so it can support like majority of monitors out there. So that's, I mean, there's no reason to need faster than this for office documents and such, and YouTube and stuff like that. Your audio chipset, that comes down to user preference. This integrated audio is adequate for 95% probably like over 95% of people. Like they won't care to have a dedicated sound card because they usually can't hear the difference in sound quality or other means. But usually that's more than adequate. So I mean, whatever integrated now, it used to be a long time ago that they were pretty crappy and sounded horrible. But now they're usually pretty decent. I mean, for me, I still will always have a sound card in my computer. Um, but if you're, like I said, a basic computer, you don't need more than an integrated audio chipset, which every motherboard includes. This one happens to include an 8-channel chipset, so if you have a 7.1 speaker system, however that hooks up to this, there hasn't been a 7.1 computer speaker system for years. I have a 5.1, and that works well on anything like this. But if you happen to have that, it will work on this as well. Your LAN speed is your wired internet speed. Most newer motherboards will have gigabit, which goes up to 1,000 megabits per second, as you see here. Which, I mean, is the best, obviously. You can have ones that go even higher, but that's kind of useless, and it's just like they're gonna have something better than that before that happens. I'm sure, like 1,000. Your internet speed, the average speed, I think in the U.S. is less than 10. If that puts that in perspective, like how much you actually need. A 1/100 port, like every single computer has, like any modern computer will have at least a 1/100 LAN speed port, and so it's not necessary. If you play like games, the 1,000 could give you a tiny bit less um, lag. I mean, on local network, not online. But or if you're transferring files or something, if you transfer files over the network, you're probably gonna want the 1,000 megabit per second. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. It's just an extra feature. It's nice to have. Put that in storage. Southbridge is hard to explain, but usually the higher number right here, 850, is a lower number. Then you have 950. Usually that comes into a better chipset, but that doesn't mean it is. Like there could be for instance, this is 850. There could be a 750 chipset. And so the 750 is going to be less than the 850, but there could be a 770 chipset would actually be better than this 850 chipset. It's the older version, but it's still better because it was better when it was new before, if you understand what I mean. Okay. Okay, to get into details here, if you look on this page, it'll give you a lot more details than the overview page. I'll give you your brand, your model number, your socket type. I'm going to explain this after your chipset, your memory, how many expansion slots, storage devices, onboard video, onboard audio, onboard LAN, ports on the rear panel, input-output connections, like the actual size and dimensions of the motherboard, the form factor, different extra features it might have over other motherboards. The warranty, very important on the warranty. And I'll explain over these one by one. And this is just a general guide for all. Some have different stuff, but this will get you a general idea. Brand ECS, is a elite group, I guess. That's what ECS stands for. I don't actually own anything from them. Okay, the AM3 socket types what you're gonna have to look at, and it's hard for me to explain. I'll explain my best when you get to the CPU video. AM3 socket's a fairly new one, I think. I'm not very familiar with AMD CPUs, but at least probably 3 or 4 years old, at least that much I'd say. Now they have AM3 Plus and now AM3 Plus socket, as well as the FX socket, if I'm correct. But I will get to that later. Okay. Anyways, it's kind of tricky with sockets. The computer I built had an AM3 Plus socket type, but AM3 also works in the AM3 Plus socket as long as the motherboard's BIOS supports it. which happened to be on mine, and I think most do. It's just you gotta confirm it. That's what I really like about forums, because usually someone has experience already with this. Like I don't. I mean, with this specific motherboard, or like if it was AM3 Plus, like if you bought an older CPU, so it could work, save a little bit of money. Um, if it works, so you have to make compatibility is a big deal for CPUs. You got to make sure it's the same thing. Easiest way is says AM3 CPU. Um, buy a AM3 CPU to go on the AM3 motherboard. Um, you might want to change your mind on the motherboard once you choose the CPU, because um, we'll be talking about overclocking later as well, and that could be a big difference in what motherboard you want, because this one probably won't do much at all of that. And you could pay $50 more on the motherboard, pay $50 less than the CPU, because the more expensive motherboard could overclock. That allow you to get a faster CPU for less money, and that's what it means. So you would save money in the long run, pretty much is what it means. Type of CPU, they have their socket type, but then you have types that are different spec CPUs. Phenom would be the fastest out of these three. Athlon is next. Then you have Sempron, or types that are for AM3. Then you have a FSB of 2600 megahertz. It's just, I think it's very similar to that socket type and everything else. You have Northbridge numbers here, 880G, like Northbridge. I mean, it's just, you'll have to ask in forums. Like, me off the top of my head, all the numbers aren't 100% clear. I kind of know the Intel chipset's better because that's what I have, and that's what I look at more because that's what I'm going to upgrade with. But, like I said, AMD is a cheaper method, and it gives less performance, but it's also cheaper. So, I mean, you get for what you pay for. Yeah, it says max supported up to 32 gigs of RAM. I mean, if you're buying this motherboard, you do not need 32 gigs of RAM. 8 at most. I'd say 16 if you're really pushing it. Like, you're trying to really go cheap and get a motherboard that actually can do stuff. Memory standard, I explained that. Dual channel memory, goes from dual channel all the way, well, single channel actually, all the way up to quad channel now. Dual channel is usually the most common. Triple channel, some Intel motherboards, mostly dual channel, and then in the very top of the line, Intel have quad channel memory now, which really only matters for, like, again, private video editing and high-end photo editing and those type of applications. Expansion slots, like I said before, you have two of those. The PCI Express Time 1 slots can be used for like newer sound cards, USB expansion ports on the back if you need more USB ports, and different little add-on cards that you can add on to your computer. And same thing for PCI slots. PCI is usually older devices. PCI has been around a lot longer than PCI Express times 1 has. Pretty much the same thing, so you can add cheaper older cards that can work the same way. SATA 6 is a big deal. That's nice that this cheap motherboard has SATA 6. That's a new technology as of last year, 2011. Don't quote me on that. This one has 5 ports, which is typically all you should need. You can have one for your hard drive, one for your DVD drive, and that would give you 3 others for other hard drives. Lucky enough, this also supports RAID. That's very good. If you can get in that's combining 2 hard drives. You can either have one clone to back up your data automatically, or you can have one double your speed, or such like that. I can possibly make a video on that later, because I have RAID 0, which doubles my speed in my one desktop, and that's the only RAID I've used. But SATA 6 is good because the new SSDs are the only things that really take advantage of SATA 6. But I highly, as said before, highly recommend an SSD, and SATA 6 is the best way to fully take advantage of it. As I said before, onboard chipset. is more than adequate, and onboard audio more than adequate, onboard LAN more than adequate. You do have PS2 ports, which is good. So if you're upgrading from an old computer, you want to still save a little money and use an older keyboard, an older mouse you might already have, then you can use this one. Happens to have two. Most of the new ones either don't have any or have one. I think both of my computers have one PS2 peripheral port, but this happens to have two, so you can put a keyboard and mouse in. Usually the ones I have one, and they either support one keyboard or one mouse and such like that. Video ports, D-sub is known as also as VGA, and then DVI, digital video interface, right there. That two connections that most every single monitor have. USB ports. This does not have USB 3, so if you want USB 3, either you're going to have to spend a little bit more money, or you're going to have to get an expansion card, which you might as well spend the money for the expansion card on an upgraded motherboard, because it'd be cheaper, and also it would probably give you a better motherboard as well. If you really need it, then yeah, I would say get a better motherboard. If you gonna find yourself getting external hard drives and stuff that will use it, I guess that'd be a lot faster than USB 2. But yeah, like it says, it gives you 6 USB ports. That's usually adequate. Plus, it'll give you internal I/O connectors right here. Means like the front two USB ports on the case, as shown before, or what you usually have in the front of your case. That's what's connected to an onboard port on your motherboard. So since you only have two, it uses 2 of the 6 already. So you can have up to 6 external USB ports on your computer if your case supports all that. And so that's really nice. Not USB 3 like some of the newer cases support. It has audio ports that can go to the front on the back of the computer as well, right here. And the audio connectors are usually on every motherboard that has integrated audio. Will have audio connectors for the front of your case. This form factor happens to be ATX. Is a fairly common form factor. You're gonna have to look at your case to make sure it fits, as I said before. This is typically the form around 12 inches by 9.6, 9 inches, 12 by 9. That's about what you'll see for ATX form factor size. Just look for the form factor spec. Just size dimensions if you really want to make make sure it fits in the case. Like my friend's case is, I think, just an ATX case, but it's really it's like a full tower case, but it's older and it's odd. So it like the motherboard is like really close to the hard drive mountain bays, and so it could be like that 0.6 inches could make a difference. So it's keen to also measure and that. But 99% of the time you won't have a problem with that. In any case that says it supports ATX, it should support, unless you're doing a very awkward build, I'd say. Power pin, that's a standard 24-pin power standard. I'll explain that and when I get the power supplies. Features, this has SATA 6, EV overclock. It can overclock, but probably not very much. So I give you a base maybe you can get 20% extra performance at most, I feel, on a cheap motherboard like this. That's still better than nothing, but yeah. Okay, warranty, very popular. This is a pretty much standard amount of time for warranty. Some warranties are better, some are a little bit less. I think usually the least you get would be 1 year, which is pretty low, because usually they get 3 years for both parts. So if 3 years and motherboard dies, you have within 3 years of buying it, they should replace it. That's the problem with these smaller companies. I've heard stories that they don't replace it. Then I've heard good reviews that they replaced it with no issues. They called them up, they replaced it without any hassle and stuff like that. So it's a hit or miss. Even like the top end companies have problems where they don't want to replace your stuff, even though you paid for it all and you still haven't. It sucks. But yeah, 3 months on the parts and 2 years labor, which I think is cost to repair it, something like that. So pretty much you're good for 2 years. And I mean, after 2 years, if it doesn't die, it probably won't die unless you're really overheating it, or you do something to it. Like I killed mine because I overclocked it too much. So you're really gonna have to like watch overclocking if you want your motherboard to last a long time. Um, I hope that explained everything for AMD. It's gonna be easier once we get to the CPU video to explain that. I'm gonna get to Intel motherboards and kind of go like over like their sockets over here. You look on the left. They have like a dual socket, so you can have two CPUs on one motherboard. I wish I could have that. It's really expensive, like over $2,000 to get not the motherboard, but to get the CPUs and motherboard to be over $2,000. So it's just not worth it to me to get that. You would have to be really fast. 2011 socket is the newest. Like you can kind of look at sockets. Socket 775 is an old socket, which is 1155 is a pretty good socket. 1156 was one of those odd sockets. I don't think it was really very popular, I guess. And 1155 kind of is the same thing but better. 1336 was the original Core i7s, which has been replaced by the new 2011 socket. 2011 is the newest socket, and I think actually yeah, it came out in 2011. I can't my memory's really bad. But it came out in 2011 or 2012, which I find funny. It's around that. The number actually means the amount of pins on the CPU socket, a number of connections. So you can kind of assume the more connections, the better CPU you can get. But that's not always the case, for sure. We're going to look at the 2011 socket. We're going to look at power search, because that's for old motherboards. You can choose manufacturer, you want new, you want retail, open box, what socket you want, what CPU type you want. Go between Intel. Well, if you're on AMD, you can choose AMD. It's pretty much the same. What front side bus you want. If you can learn these things through forums. What chipset you want. Like you can ask, like, what's the best chipsets for gaming? And they could probably tell you some. They would probably just give you motherboards instead of actually telling you the chipset. And you can try to use that as a basis. Then you can like post in a forum asking, oh, is this a good motherboard? And like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Something like that. What memory it supports, how much memory, as you can see, up to 768 gigabytes of RAM. That's a lot of RAM. Overkill to me. Yeah. AGB would be, it's an old graphics slot before PCI Express, and you want to see we're at the 3.0, so that's very old AGP. No reason to get that unless you're really trying to hold back. It's not worth it, in my opinion, at all. It's hard to know. Like some motherboards are good at PCI Express 2.0, then the newer ones have 3.0. It's not really any big difference per game and performance, truthfully. PCI slots, I mean, it's hard to tell how many you will need, so I usually keep it at any. SATA ports, you could need a minimum amount. Like, some have SATA 3 and SATA 6, so you want to determine how many SATA 6 you need, so you might want at least 2 SATA 6, because then you could have two SSDs, and a regular hard drive won't take advantage of SATA 6, even though it says it has SATA 6, it won't be any faster. If it was just on SATA 3. So that could be a cheaper method, have one that has both, and that could be cheaper. RAID, like I said, if you know what that does, it can increase performance, it mirror your hard drive to protect your data. That could be useful, you might want that. Onboard chipsets, you can put any, or you can select none so it doesn't show any. That's a new feature which I'm glad they added, because before you couldn't select that. So you would still get ones with onboard chipsets even though you didn't want it with that. Or you can click this, integrated graphics, and I think it might add them all. I'm not 100% sure. You can add, if you want, how many channels of audio you want. Max LAN speed, you could quad LAN ports, that's like servers and stuff like that. HDMI ports, display ports, different connections to connect monitors and projectors and stuff like that. how many USB ports you want, so you can USB 3 and then USB 2, just USB 3, which is backwards compatible with USB 2, Firewire 11 and 1394, eSATA, external SATA for connecting to external hard drives, optical audio out, SPDIF. The form factors where we're going to mainly look at. You have ATX, extended ATX, Flex ATX, HPTX, Micro ATX, Micro BTX, Micro ITX, and you can read the list. And XL ATX are the other ones. What you're probably going to look at for a starter PC would either be Micro ATX or ATX. Extended ATX, you're going to need a special case for. Same for HPTX or XL ATX. You need a special case to support those to be able to connect into the case. So the majority of cases support micro ATX and ATX. If anything, it should support ATX over micro. Unless you're buying a smaller case, then it's more likely to support just micro than both ATX and micro. So we're going to do a quick search for those. Out of the probably over 1,000, well, it's showing one of 27 motherboards. I don't think that's correct. It shouldn't be only 27 motherboards. I couldn't believe there'd be only 27 for just ATX. So micro, sometimes their search can glitch and it's really hard. So sometimes you might want to check once you find out what socket you want, depending on the CPU. See, the motherboard could change as well. And when you find a CPU, so it's kind of hard. You don't put a definite decision on these parts until you get your every other part decided. So that definitely put that into consideration. Like you have an X79 chipset 2011, X79 2011, and they're like $100 apart. Whether or not you need the extra $100 of features is up to you. Like me, since I want to overclock quite a bit, and that's mainly what those are for. It's a 5-year warranty, and it's made to last, and I hope it lasts, and it's gonna be good, it's run cool, and everything else. I'm probably gonna spend the extra $100 to get that. That's what you're paying for, in this. You can also go back to AMD, and go back to their highest end, which is way cheaper usually. Like, these are some of their most expensive, and even then, they're still considerably cheaper than Intel's. And there's some of the top of the line AMD motherboards, and they're still cheaper than Intel's, like lower end, like the low end of their high end, I guess, if you will. Then you look at these. Even these, there's the Sabertooth. It's pretty much it's very similar motherboard as that $320 one, but for like $175. The difference is the CPU it supports is very different. AMD CPUs even AMD's top of the line CPU is considerably slower than Intel's fastest CPU. Even Intel's mid-range CPUs have about the same speed as AMD's, so AMD's fallen behind. That's why I usually don't choose them for what I do for video encoding and gaming. But if you just need a computer at work, so you can't beat it, because the AMD still has the best price to performance ratio for sure. When you're talking cheaper motherboard, RAM doesn't really matter. Cheaper motherboard, cheaper processor, it comes out cheaper in the long run to get AMD. But if you want raw performance, like I say, you got to spend the money to get it. It's gonna be hard for me to answer questions on this video for sure, because there's so much that can be asked about motherboards. That's why I said please use forums. Google is your friend. I will try to answer questions if you have just like a basic question, like stuff like that, but don't expect me to answer the question. Like I said, please subscribe to have more tips and tricks and other tutorials like this, and continue on to the next video.